All right, what is a second, third, fourth, fifth draft supposed to look like? My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. I recently made another version of this video in which I talked about my 6 stages of self-editing, but specifically with an eye towards cutting word count because somebody asked me that specifically. So if you scrolled off of that video because you said, well, I don't need to cut words, I don't need to listen to this video is now for you. And I do have a longer 50-minute version of this up on my Patreon. I'm not super happy with the quality on it, so I will be re-recording that and probably actually doing more like a 2-hour version or maybe a part 1, part 2 on it because there is a lot of information here. I think that this is a process that can help a lot of people, particularly if you are overwhelmed with the self-editing process or you're not entirely sure where to start. Perhaps you got a lot of feedback from a critique partner and they sort of like scattershotted their feedback and just told you to fix a whole bunch of different stuff and you don't know where to start and you're feeling very overwhelmed. That's what this process is for. If you already have a process that you are happy with, or you look at this and you're like, well, that's dumb, I don't like it, that's great. You do not have to use this. This is not rules. This is not like an industry standard or anything. This is just a process that I came up with to help people who are feeling overwhelmed with the self-editing process so that they can feel more confident as they move through these revisions. There is a logic to this. If you know me, I am a list and spreadsheet type of person, so of course there is a logic to it rather than just sort of like going by feelings. But if you like just going by vibes and feelings, then great, keep doing that. Whatever process works for you is the one that works. So let's dive in. All right, so your first draft is actually what I call a zero draft, and that is where you have just shoveled a bunch of sand into a sandbox in the hopes that someday you are going to be able to build a sand castle out of it. The first draft, whatever it looks like when it is done, it is perfect. Its only purpose is to exist so that you can edit it. You cannot edit a blank page, and all writing is rewriting. So if the draft exists, even if it is hot garbage, even if it is only 17 pages long, even if it is 750,000 words long, it is perfect. It exists exactly the way that it needed to because now you can dive in and start doing edits. So you started with a zero draft and now you are going to come in and you are going to do a structural edit. If you did not plot ahead of time, now is the time in which you are going to use plotting tools to diagnose the structure that you have on the page. If you did do a lot of plotting ahead of time, then this piece is probably going to be very easy for you. You are making sure that an inciting incident happens at a time when people expect it to, that you have plenty of room to breathe in the denouement and we are settling into the new normal, that you have a midpoint in which a character goes from being reactive to being proactive. And there's a lot of flexibility in this, but there are some beats and some expectations that people have in their stories, and you are going to make sure that your structure meets those expectations. Then we are going to do a character edit. Once you have moved scenes around and you know that every scene on the page needs to exist, even if it needs to look very different than it does right now, you know that everything on the page matters, needs to be there, or you know what needs to go in those spots, even if it's not very well written yet, but you know what order everything is going to go in and what your arc looks like. You are now going to go through, do you have the right number of characters? Do you need to combine characters? Do you need to get rid of people? Do you need to bump somebody up from secondary to primary status, or go the other direction, take them from primary and make them a much less big deal? Do you know who your antagonist is? Do you know who your protagonist is? Do you know who their friends are? And then are those characters' arcs clear on the page? Do they change from the beginning to the end of the story, and do they do so in a way that feels logical and makes sense? When you're moving stuff around up here, you might have characters and their emotional arc starts ping-ponging all over the place. This second round of edits, so third draft, is going to be where you're fixing and cleaning that up and making their reactions make sense with where they are in the story emotionally. Third round of editing, or your fourth draft, is a world edit. Because these two are very big and very difficult to do, I now recommend that people get a chance to play around in their stories. And so this is where you're going to add in all of the fun stuff. The reason why you chose your setting, the magic system that you built, the cool historical tidbits and factoids and all of the fun stuff that you want to add in, that's what's going to go into this next round of editing. Then we are going to move to scene level editing. I often say that a scene should be doing more than one thing at a time. This is where you're going to be doing that. Do you actually have the right number of scenes? Do they need to start being condensed and combined? Are you getting in late and out early? Does the scene have a rise and falling action? Do you have 6 of them in a row that all have rising action with no falling action in between? You are now doing scene level work. By this point, so this is your 4th round of revision, so you are on a 5th draft. And again, if you don't like this process, you don't want to do this many rounds, that's great. I'm not the boss of you. But if you have gotten to this point, the book should now feel good. It doesn't feel great, it doesn't feel totally ready, but it's very book shaped, right? Like all of the pieces are in the right order, it's kind of the right length, like it will feel very, very book shaped. If you are a brand new writer, you are going to be tempted at this stage right here after this scene level edit, you are going to think you're done. You are going to think that this book is ready to send out because it is fine. There's nothing wrong with it at this point. I encourage you to keep going because these last couple of pieces here, this is where you're going to really make your work shine. This nuance edit, this is where you are going to stop saying everything baldly on the page and you are instead going to pull back and you're going to rely on subtext. You're going to rely on nuance. You are going to do all of those things that are a gut punch, that are making people live in the interiority of your characters. You are taking things from being obvious to being subtextual and fun and interesting and enigmatic, and you are now making this book much more immersive and much less like someone just told you a story. You are making the reader live through the story at this stage. And then we're going to do a line edit. This is where you're going to really polish up the writing, and you are going to get rid of redundancies. You're going to make sure that you're using the exact right word. Are you using the strongest verbs possible? Are you making your writing very crisp, very voicey? All of these things are going to happen down here in the line edit. These two last rounds of editing are what take a book from good to great, from, yeah, okay, that's fine, to I've got to have my hands on that. These are the things that really make a project shine. I recommend that you go all the way through this entire process.